Good morning and welcome to the Cloud Foundry Morning Edition. This is episode 20. My name is Stormy Peters and I'm VP of Developer Relations at the Cloud Foundry Foundation. I'm joined today by some of my fellow Cloud Foundry ambassadors. I will have them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Dan Young, EngineerBetter, relatively new Cloud Foundry consultancy in the UK.
Hey, this is Max from IBM, and I do a bunch of different things, but mostly I work with different teams at Foundry.
Hi, my name is Joanna Kester with IBM. I'm a program director of open technologies, so I get to work on fun things like Cloud Foundry and OpenStack and all kinds of cool technologies.
Well, thanks for joining me, Dan, Joanna, and Dr. Max. Our goal here with the podcast is to bring you the news from the week so that you can keep up to date with what's happening in the Cloud Foundry world. So, Dr. Max, we had a CAB call this week. You want to tell us just briefly what the CAB call is and what happened there?
Yeah, so thanks, Stormy. I think this is you could say a community advisory board call. That's what the CAB stands for. But mostly it's an opportunity for people and everybody who's interested in Cloud Foundry, obviously the community, to call in and not only discuss and present anything that they have, but also to get firsthand, I guess, Q&A with the PMs. So what we end up doing in those calls is we get the various PMs of product managers around Cloud Foundry, and this is not just one particular company, every company. So the PMs all over, and they are there to pretty much answer questions, present, announce anything that's new, that's interesting, hear feedback, give feedback, and so on. So this month, so we do it once a month. It typically happens, I think, the second week of the month on Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. Obviously, this is not necessarily a good time for everybody around the world, but it seems to be a good time for different geographies. I've worked with China. I work with China every day, and I know 8 a.m. is okay for them because it's the end of their day. So you look at Europe, it's also a little bit challenging, but it's not like 1 a.m. So I think that time slot works well. And what ends up happening is we used to do sort of status update, but now it's mostly Q&As. We use the Slack channel a lot to exchange questions, to make announcements, and so on. So if you missed this one, you can actually go to the Slack channel and kind of go back and see some of the discussion that was happening.
What's maybe one of the highlights? What's one of the highlights that happened at this one?
Sure. I think this time Amit Gupta, who's the PM for I guess release integration, mentioned a bunch of different components of the release that were extracted as BOSH releases. So just for the layman person that's new to Cloud Foundry, this group release integration was tasked to do a better job of breaking down the CF release into smaller components that are more manageable, so that you would be able to swap in, swap out different components as quote-unquote BOSH releases. And they've made some progress, and they've announced, some of those that they've done. I think, certainly console release is one of them, but probably the major one that they did recently was Postgres. So if you use Postgres as your database, there is now the beginning of a release for that. And they also, of course, creating BOSH releases can be complicated depending on the software that you're doing. And they do a good job of making sure that this is done. The other thing that they are tasked to do, which Amit discussed, is the fact that they are trying to get initial manifests for different clouds. So if you're trying to get Cloud Foundry into a particular cloud, certainly AWS has always been sort of the cloud that most teams in Cloud Foundry use to test, and therefore manifest for that cloud is very well available. But there's increasingly support for different clouds, and that's going to come straight from them in terms of an initial manifest that you can use and modify. And this is I think is big. I mean, for us, IBM, for instance, we support, you know, different clouds, but SoftLayer is our main cloud, and we do the CPI, we do everything. So people come to us and we tell them, hey, this is how you do it. But I think having not just, you know, AWS, but SoftLayer and Google Cloud and all of the different other clouds that Cloud Foundry supports come from a team that is tasked to at least test some of them, some aspect of Cloud Foundry into those clouds, and then you know, have a central place for tooling is certainly a great. It's going to save a lot of people's time. I'm hoping.
It's really important as part of the whole multi-cloud push that it supports. We're seeing a lot more clouds supported and a lot more users using multiple clouds. So,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is arguably. I don't think it's the. I mean, I'm a bit biased because that's what I do. I help the BOSH team and so on. I think it's arguably the most important aspect of Cloud Foundry when you compare it with the rest. I mean, in addition to doing everything else that other paths do, we also do this, which is work across different clouds, and we do it pretty much like last time I counted, it was over 10. So that was that. I think Eric was there too. Eric is the PM for Diego, and he did mention some of the progress that they've done in Diego in terms of not only supporting. I mean, they're doing some performance testing, but also I think, you know, they've always been questioning every cab for the past maybe 3 months. What is the end of life of DEA and things like this? And I think they discussed that. I believe Chip was there to mention that essentially end of the year was kind of the target that people were.
And so if people are interested in finding out what happened and following along, they can come to the call. And you said they could also, should they go to the agenda or to the Slack channel, or where should they go to find notes on it?
Right. I would say, I mean, I think it's going to be, you know, you could listen to something like this, like a podcast like this, and get a feedback and get sort of one person's opinion on what happened. But I really would encourage people to just join, right? I mean, we do this every month. You know, if you have a question, you know, email the list or, you know, Stormy or anybody in the community or me, and we'll let you know when the next one is. We always announce it, and come and join, because there's a lot of people that come and they listen in, but certainly if you have questions, you can do that. And then like Stormy is saying, you can always go back to the Slack channel and kind of read backwards from the last comment and see kind of the discussion that was happening. And then of course you'll reach a time where, you know, it'll be the previous one and so on and so forth. So yeah, so that was maybe the highlights. There's a lot more that happens, but those were the highlights.
Well, thanks, Dr. Max, and thanks for running them every month too. So everybody, you can join them. So the community calls, the CAB call is a great place to get updates. The other meetings that happen regularly that are a good time to follow along. A good thing about the CAB call is it's open for anyone to ask the PMs questions. But the PMs themselves also have a meeting where they get together and talk about what they've done in the last couple of weeks and what they're going to work on next in the roadmap. And those are called the PMC meetings. So the PMC Runtime meeting met in this past week, and there's a link in the notes. You can go see everything they talked about. They talk about which tasks they worked on and which ones are next. But one of the main things I think is important to point out is that there's an end-of-life timeline for the DEA backend. So the DEA backend is going away, and there's now a timeline for when that's going to happen. So it's probably important for a lot of people. But there's also updates from the runtime. The Runtime PMC meeting actually covers a lot of the subcomponents of Cloud Foundry. So there's updates from the CLI team, from the Garden team, the Diego team, the routing team. So it's a great place if you want to know what's coming technically to go follow along. Another great place to get updates on what's going on in the project is the mailing list. I think in particular, the CFDev mailing list is really good. Dan, do you want to give us an update on what happened there in the past week?
Sure. So yeah, there's a few things I picked up on. I think Max just mentioned one or two of them. So I saw that the CF release, BOSH release, had been sort of exploded a little bit, and there was a couple of releases spinning out of that. So there's one for Postgres and there's one for NATS as well. So Amit announced those. And there was also some new service brokers contributed to the CF community GitHub organization. So I think there was one for S3 and one for Elasticache as well. There's two AWS services, and they were written by Sylvain Gibier, I think it is, if I've attributed that correctly. And there was also an announcement about the Buildpacks PM changing, which I think is quite a major event because it's a very intensive role, and Danny Rosen's been doing that for a while, but it's now been handed over to Stephen Levine, who I believe worked on Lattice previously and is also has worked on the PCFDev team as well. I think that's correct. So those are the sort of main things that I picked up on the mailing list. And I'd also noticed fairly recently, and this was because I was working with a customer where we're doing a lot of stuff with Concourse, that you can now use Docker Compose to get Concourse up and running very quickly. So previously, before version 1.6, you could use the Vagrant box to get things running locally, and then you could run a BOSH deployment if you wanted to cluster things in a cloud. You now have the option of using Docker, because they have a Docker repository, and actually running a Concourse cluster purely in Docker using Docker Compose. So this is really helpful for working in teams where you want to get up and running quickly locally. And I'm really looking forward to the sort of more team-based and multi-tenancy features of Concourse, because having worked with it in enterprise environments now, it's something that we really need is okay, you've got one team up and running with Concourse, but what happens with the next team and the next team and the next team? So looking forward to seeing that product develop, and really so excited about it, because it's along with BOSH and Cloud Foundry itself, it's sort of formed a triangle of stuff that really changes the way you can get things done. So that's great. Yeah, and we haven't announced it yet, but EngineerBetter is going to be joining the foundation. So
awesome.
we're really excited about that, and we're working with Scott on sorting the membership out, and can expect a formal announcement hopefully quite soon. So yeah, that's big news for us.
That's big news for all of us. It's great to see the ecosystem grow and see the Cloud Foundry Foundation have more and more different types of companies involved and participating in the future of Cloud Foundry. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what other names appear quite soon as well. I've heard some rumors about some big ones, so yeah, looking forward to that. So that's that's helpful. I almost announced one last week that I wasn't supposed to, so I'm glad I didn't. All right, well, thanks, Dan, and welcome to the foundation. Look forward to the announcement. Thanks. So we usually cover events here, and Joanne, I think you have been involved with the Cloud Foundry Days and a few events that are coming up. You want to tell us about them?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about these Cloud Foundry Days because they're really pretty cool. I think the foundation has been creative about how to spread awareness in Asia. So last year we had the Cloud Foundry Summit in Asia last December, and that was great to get an audience there to start building the awareness. But that's hard because it's a huge continent to be trying to tackle, right? And a lot of people we want to communicate with. So what they've decided to do is take this approach of Cloud Foundry Days. We'll have the Cloud Foundry Summit, of course, in September, but in the fourth quarter of the year, we'll have Cloud Foundry Days. And what this allows us to do is have these mega meetup structure days where you can run it in about a day. The audience is smaller than a summit. It's bigger than a meetup. We call them mega meetups sometimes. And it allows us to get to a lot of different cities and not just one. So we can touch so many more people. So I'm going to go through these. These will be in the notes as well. But in case you want to jot these down in timeline order, we're going to have a Cloud Foundry Day in Sydney and Melbourne in, October 18th through the 20th. And then we're going to go on up to Cloud Foundry Days Shanghai. That'll be October 25th. We'll have a day in Beijing. That's October 27th. Cloud Foundry Day in Tokyo is scheduled for the week of November 6th. So that date, stay tuned, is still got to be determined. We're also planning a day in Hong Kong. That'll be also the week of November 6th. So we have to finalize that. And then we're also looking at Bangalore, and that's a date to be determined. And I've heard some other cities like Shenzhen, China, have been mentioned as well. And again, this is just a great way to reach these communities in Asia, reach a lot of different cities, a lot more people. They're a little easier to put on than a full-scale summit. And we're putting these on because of the sponsors. Sponsors like IBM are going to step up and run a day in Asia and to help these roll out throughout the fourth quarter. So really excited about that approach.
Awesome. That sounds really exciting. And so these events are for local community, but if I'm a Cloud Foundry community member from somewhere else, can I attend?
Yeah, I mean, that's the beautiful thing about meetups is they're just open to everybody. We want to reach people whether they're using Cloud Foundry or not, and to help share the wonderfulness of Cloud Foundry. So yeah, open to all. Awesome.
Thanks, Joanna.
Yep.
And Dan, I think you wanted to talk a little bit about what's the Cloud Foundry Summit's coming up really soon in Europe. So this is in September, which is like next month.
Yeah, it's racing towards us, and I'm slightly scared about the amount of stuff that I have to do before the summit. So mainly one of the main things is there's going to be a lot of training happening on the first day, as always. I think there's 4 different courses you can choose from before Frankfurt on the Monday. So there'll be a kind of beginners 0 to 0 course. I think there's a microservices architecture course and a kind of BOSH and everything else course. And I also just saw, I think that Apogee are running something around API first development. So there's 4 different courses. EngineerBetter are running the beginners course. NE9s are involved, and also I think Pivotal are doing some of the training as well. So it's a collaborative effort to get people trained up. And you should check out the training page on the summit page to find out more.
And if anyone is interested in taking one of those training classes, I highly recommend that you go sign up now. They've sold out at every summit we've had. And in China, I actually got to play bouncer and try to get people out of the room that had come in who had not signed up. So if you're interested, sign up now. And also at the Cloud Foundry Summit, we're talking about having a hack day the Monday before. So at the same time as the training, if you're not going to the classes, because you're probably already a Cloud Foundry contributor or you didn't sign up in time, you can come hack with us in an open space, and we'll have experts on hand, and you can work on any project you've been working on, or you can start a new project. I know some people from the containers team will be there, probably some people from the Diego team. So if you're interested in helping with that, I'm still looking for volunteers at this point. And then I think there's also another event coming up soon. Dan?
Yeah, there's I recently found that there was going to be an OpenStack day in the UK, which is obviously always of interest to anyone using Cloud Foundry because there's quite a lot of close links between those 2 worlds. So I've been invited. Well, I've been asked to speak at OpenStack Day in the UK, which is going to be great. So that's actually going to be in Bristol, which is my hometown, and it's being hosted at HP Labs, and HP obviously a big OpenStack contributor. So all of their engineering teams for OpenStack are based in Bristol in the UK, and that they're hosting OpenStack UK Day. So there's, I think it's, I can't remember what the URL is, but if you search for OpenStack Day UK, you can get the sign up page and registration for that. And it's on the 15th of September. So anybody in the UK, I'd recommend that you go along.
Awesome, that's coming up soon. There are also always Cloud Foundry meetups near you. I didn't include the list this time, but there's usually a handful every week around the world covering every continent. If there's not one near you, you can start one. Contact me, can I probably get you t-shirts to get started with or something like that. But please reach out to your local community or the mailing list or the calls that we have or Slack, and you can join us as well. So thank you to all of the ambassadors for participating this week. And this has been the Cloud Foundry Morning Edition, episode 20. If you enjoyed the podcast, please tell your friends about it. You can also subscribe to our podcast through YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, or any pretty much any other podcast RSS feed. So please tell your friends, and please join us again next week. Thank you all.